Frederick, I'm a eye surgeon. So I've been in practice for 24 years. I have a diploma in medical law. I've served the AOS in various capacities. And my primary experience comes from the involvement with the IMA PPLSS scheme, which deals with CPA cases against all medical professionals, and the Tamil Nadu State Legal Service Authority, where I'm a medical expert, and my association with the Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association and Nursing Home Board, and with NABH, which also receives complaints from patients and hospitals, and I have my own share of unhappy patients. So now practice is like a daily war. We have become the barriers, not only in the ophthalmic premier leagues as well as in daily practice. So I'll be talking to you about the basics of Consumer Protection Act, the doctrine principles, the landmark cases and judgments, and tips to prevent infections. I'm sure there will be a lot of overlap between the speakers because the subject is very common. So this act was passed in 1986, amended in 91, 93 and 2002, and many of the amendments what we follow came into force in 15th March 2003. So the objective was manifold. It was basically started as an education forum, and the right of the patient to be heard and to be given safe treatment and choose the right choice of Medicare. Then information to the patient and the customers, and last was the redressal forum. And now it is primarily a redressal forum because the other aspect has been relegated to the background by the media and the judiciary. So how is service defined under the Consumer Protection Act? Basically, private hospitals and many medical professionals fall within the scope of the expression, and any person competent to file it containing the allegation against a medical professional, and all these people can make a complaint, not only the patient and his attenders or relatives. Consumer associations can file a suit, the central or state government can file a suit, and consumer group or patient group with the same interest can also make a complaint. So basically there is a three-tier redressal agency: the district forums, state commission, National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission, and they have their own jurisdiction. The district forum, where the claim amount does not exceed 20 lakhs, state commission 20 lakhs and above but not exceeding 1 crore, and beyond 1 crore all the cases comes to the National Commission. So they have appellate jurisdiction also. So this is basically the procedure in consumer courts, the stage of pleading, where the patient or the association files a complaint, then the doctor or hospital files a reply, and then the patient again files a rejoinder. Then stage of evidence, where the court examines the documentary evidence, medical expert opinion as well as literature opinion from both sides. Then the stage of arguments, both oral as well as written. Then the stage of decision, and execution, appeal and revision petition. So there is a long process involved, various stages. And previously time frame was as per 24A of the Act, 2 years from the date on which the cause of action arises. But now this delimitation time has been taken off with certain guidelines, and there are no set rules to decide such time when the patient can file a suit. So this is the basic of this Consumer Protection Act of 1986 in India. So whether you like it or not, CPA is here to stay. It's almost 19 years, 29 years now, so, and may have new clauses and amendments restrictive to medical community. So basically CPA is a Damocles sword hanging above our neck, particularly the practitioners. So what is medical negligence? I think a previous speaker has highlighted this. Is both an act as well as omission. So this particular case where death due to delayed decision of conducting surgery was the issue, and so when there is a omission, it's called as medical negligence. So to find out whether there is a medical negligence in a particular case, this particular test is the accepted norm called Bolam test. So in the case of medical men, negligence means a failure to act in accordance with the standard of reasonably competent medical men at the time. So there may be one or more standards, and if you conform to one of these proper standards, then the doctor is not negligent. Supreme Court of India again has laid down similar principle in a couple of cases like Dr. Lakshman Balkrishna Joshi and the landmark case of Indian Medical Association versus VP Shanta and others. So the rule adopted by various states in evaluating standard of care taken by a doctor is under this doctrine called respectable minority rule, which regards a doctor as not being negligent merely because he elects to pursue one of the various recognized course of treatment. So it can be any of the recognized course of treatment, not a new treatment. Another doctrine is the principle of causation. So for a claim of medical negligence to succeed, the causation, the complainant should prove a causal link between the alleged negligence and the injury suffered by the patient. So this is basically based on the principle of no harm, no foul. So if there is no harm in spite of negligence, then in spite of perceived negligence, there is no foul. Vicarious liability, this is what most of the hospital would come under. Basically, he who does the work through another does it by himself. The reason is respondent superior. So all the hospitals which employ some people to take care of people have to come through this norm. So this is a case reflecting that where the State Commission in Chennai held that hospital authorities are liable to patient for injuries caused due to negligence or other fault of doctors, surgeons, nurses, anesthetists, and or any other member of the hospital in the course of the work. So, and it does not depend on whether the employment is permanent or temporary. And this particular SKC Medical Foundation claimed relief, stating that they were employing temporary casual laborers. So, but the court opined that permanent or temporary, casual or paid, whole or part-time, as in the case of visiting physicians or surgeons, they are also covered under the CPA Act. This particular doctrine, things speaks for itself. This is a proof of want of standard care, but there are certain things that speaks for itself, like these examples: enucleating the wrong eye, operating the wrong eye, doing a different surgery. So in spite of posting for trabeculectomy, doing a cataract surgery, or implanting a different lens, or leaving a foreign body inside body during surgery, all these are basically will come under this thing speaks for itself doctrine. This landmark case between Apollo Hospitals and Upper Nadartha, leaving a foreign object in the body of the patient, highlighted the various issues involved with this doctrine, that things speaks for itself. So many people take defense under this doctrine called contributory negligence, negligence on the part of the patient adding to the injury. And contributory negligence is something like this: failure to give complete accurate medical history by the patient, failure to follow instructions, not applying post-operative medications, and self-medication other than prescribed by the doctor, like steroid medication without consulting the doctor. There are a few other doctrines like ignorance of law does not exist. Many medical people were using this defense as ignorance of law or to escape the liability, but court doesn't accept this. And again, this is one of the defenses commonly followed, that time frame within which a complaint can be filed. This particular case, patient got his eye operated by surgeon in 89. He got a certificate of blindness in 89. He was still in hope of gaining his height and went from second operation in 92, and he filed the complaint after 5 years in 1994. Surgeon opposed on the ground that more than 2 years have elapsed, but the commission held that the cause of action for filing the complaint would arose after the second surgery, when patient lost entire hope of recovery, and thus said the suit is maintainable. So certain cases related to the ophthalmologist, highlighting the various issues involved in ophthalmic profession. And refractive surgery is has seen a number of liability or negligence issues, particularly the radial keratotomy and myopia patients with retinal detachment after refractive surgery, persistent glare, dry eye, or glaucoma, undiagnosed glaucoma or underdiagnosed glaucoma in myopes, undercorrection or overcorrection. These are some of the issues that involve with refractive surgery, probably because of the elective nature and high patient expectation, the large payments, and issues relating to the informed consent. Most of the practitioners tend to give overconfidence or over guarantee or warranty, whatever they say. Under correction or over correction is still an issue. The quality of vision issues because of the marketing, advertising, and guarantee, etc. So this particular case study is Dr. A well-known ophthalmologist in India. So here a patient who had been blind in one eye since childhood. She underwent elective surgery to her blind right eye to reduce IOP. The patient did ask many questions, but the surgeon did not warn her of a chance of developing sympathetic ophthalmia. So the patient became totally blind after the surgery because of sympathetic ophthalmia, and the High Court found that there is a breach of his duty because the surgeon didn't warn the patient about the risk of sympathetic ophthalmia. So the report stated that doctor must warn any patient of the usual risk of procedure like infection or post-operative bleeding. This particular case before the Punjab and Haryana State Commission, complainant had cataract. He underwent phaco with the IOL right eye, but post-operatively complained about visual difficulty for near vision. He was advised spectacles, and patient had double images. So unhappy with the results, he proceeded to the court. But this particular doctor has explained the risk of anisometropic amblyopia before the surgery and written the same in the case record. So this is where the documentation really helps. And so he is written as limited visual gain, right eye explained. But the patient insisted that the two eyes surgeons who had seen him had given verbally opined that there was negligence in performing surgery and power of the lens is incorrect. But in the absence of expert affidavit, court relied on the textbook and dismissed the case. So this is one instance where medical record keeping really helps. This particular case I dealt with from the Tamil Nadu State Legal Services Authority. The patient allegation was he was subjected to 4 surgeries, have spent 50,000, lost vision due to negligence, and treatment by junior doctors. So the TNSLA asked the expert opinion, but when we went to the court record, the documents, the reality was only 2 surgery procedures performed, the other 2 were syringing, and patient have bills only for 8,000 rupees and vision was 6,600. So this is where expert examination helps, and we found that there was insufficient evidence to prove visual loss and exaggerated financial claims, and this was a teaching institution, so where the doctors work under the guidance of a consultants. So since the charges are not proven, the case was dismissed. And this case highlights that the prescription or referral notes, professional communications and medical records must strictly record whatever is necessary and nothing more. Because in this particular case, the doctor referred the patient for admission with a note that patient is a 50,000 surgery case. So these kind of loose talks or loose notes will really make the case go against the doctor. So this particular case where the hospital had the medical records destroyed in a fire accident, but the patient claimed the medical records, but the hospital didn't notify this in the newspaper advertisement or about the incident of fire. So it's the duty of the hospital to make sure the medical records are safe and confidential. So if something happens like that, you need to place the advertisement in newspaper, preserve the copies of advertisement, because that will serve as a valid defense in all future litigations. So this particular case involved about giving a guarantee in terms of numbers. For example, this doctor gave a 70% chance to the patient of regaining vision, but unfortunately the patient didn't regain any vision, so he proceeded to the court. So we have to make sure that we use the terms like fair, good or very good rather than in terms of percentage. And it's advisable that no drug, chemical or substance must be kept in the hospital. In case of a death or any medical mishap, police do come and search our premises. And so I'll just complete another couple of minutes. Before prescribing a drug, any particularly new drug or rarely used one, read the written literature accompanying it at least once. So because patient also go through all this and Google it about the drug. Right. There are some other cases which really give certain learning. like fresh investigation on reassessment. Particularly ours is a daycare procedure, and many patients are assessed at least 1 or 2 weeks before the surgical procedure. So we have to re-examine the patient and reassess the patient. If there is a need, we need to re-investigate the patients. This is common. This was actually dealt by doctor, but there is an issue here. Patient should not run a full-fledged shop for sale of medicine for dispensing prescription prescribed by ophthalmologist other than himself. So if you are prescribing your within your practice for your own patients, whether the drugs prescribed by you or some optical devices, so that is acceptable. So it's not unethical for a physician to prescribe or supply drugs, as long as there is no exploitation of the patient. So you can't insist that patient should buy the products there. So what we learned, there are certain preventive measures to avoid litigation, and also you have to know something about the medical legal defense. So complaisance, I think the previous speaker was already enlightened about this. So we should not be complacent when you receive a notice, and shouldn't be dependent on the lawyer, because he has a limited medical knowledge, and it's our duty to discuss with peers, teachers, as well as the lawyers and professional bodies to file a fitting reply to the complainant. And do not fabricate or edit or fudge the medical records. This is taken very seriously by the courts, and submit all evidence to the court and related medical literature and the opinions of other experts in the field. And please do attend the court hearings. You must at least attend during the cross-examination and during arguments. And these are some of the technical defenses followed by the doctor, that the medical services was rendered free of charge, but now this is applicable to only certain situations. And concurrent adjudication in civil court or other criminal court, this again court does not have territorial jurisdiction, and the complaint is time barred. This again doesn't hold good now. And these are some of the factual defenses you can make. Mention your in the reply. Mention your qualification, training, experience, and expertise. Mention the infrastructure facilities where you operate, the backup, support, everything, and support it with documents. It's very, very important that you also have to be bit defensive as well as offensive. So if the patient has suppressed certain, like previous illness or cross-pathy treatment, you have to highlight that with evidence. So always seek proper legal and medical advice before filing reply to the complainant. Refer to you from a consumer court. And basically, to conclude, medical negligence is not a myth. It's quite common. Hospitals do lose cases because they do not put up a proper defense. And we are very poor at documentation. This is what many of the CPA cases tell us. And we have to be brave and be bold to fight the case. So the golden rules, other than the medical legal cases, do not do to your. So behind any CPA case, there is another doctor who may be your competitor or who was given some loose talks. So do not do to your colleagues what you do not wish them to do to you. Avoid cheeky remarks and criticism, and recognize that complications do occur even in the best of hands. It can happen to you tomorrow. Do not say to the patient that the best person to do this kind of surgery is Dr. So-and-so. This really brings us more trouble. And thank you so much for your patient hearing.